Please follow. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mind you, please silence your electronic devices. That would be appreciated. Welcome everyone to the April 5th, 2016 Village of Massena Board of Trustees meeting. I call it to order. Roll call. Mr. Offel.
Here.
Mr. Carville. Here. Mr. DeShays.
Here.
Mr. LeVere.
Here.
I am here. Entertain a motion to open the public hearing on the mayor's tentative budget.
So moved.
Mr. Carville, second by Mr. LeVere. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, folks have a presentation, then we'll open up for public comment, questions. I'm going to go through some of these quickly. There are handouts for you to take. This just shows the history of the tax levy. This year I'm proposing a 0% increase in the tax levy. Keeping in mind the tax levy and the tax rate are different. Treasurer reminds me of that about every 2 days because even I get them confused. But tax levy is the amount of money we're asking for. The tax rate is based on the assessment per thousand. Tax rate per thousand this year is $15.57 that I'm proposing. I guess we're finally pleased to see it start to level out a little bit. As you can see, it's been increasing. The budget I'm proposing allocates more money from fund balance. As we go through this, you'll understand why. I'm recommending $459,858 in fund balance. That's an increase of $176,858 over last year. Last year we allocated $283,000 in fund balance. And this is one of the biggest reasons why. Given our current projections from the treasurer, when we take that number back out, so what the projections will be for at the end of this year, and we take what I've allocated in the general fund budget, that will be the fund balance, 1.5, almost 1.6 million at the end of this current fiscal year.
Can you go through that again?
Sure. The current projections minus what I've allocated in this budget, I proposed 400-some odd thousand, leaves us with almost 1.6 million fund balance. Okay.
Unappropriated.
That's unassigned, unappropriated. That's correct. General fund revenues continue to fall behind expenses. Nothing new there in the last few years. How we're spending our money. This chart breaks it down for you. Employees and public safety lead the way. This is kind of a comparison department request and what I've allocated in my budget. Also as a reminder, everything that I'm allocating is subject to change by the trustees. You can see how some of these changes were made. Big question everyone asks is, what does 1% in the budget mean? This year it means $55,247. So, in other words, if we want to subtract 1% from the budget, that's what we've got to cut. Or if we were to add that, we would add that much to the budget. Department request came in, the original budget would have meant a 16.8 increase. I'm proposing a 0% increase.
Is that $16.80 or 16.8%?
16.8%. Correct. Should be %. Very good. So there's a few ways we achieve that. I achieve that. One is reviewing actual cost and requested expense, particularly in the contractual line, what we've been spending the last few years compared to what we requested. Made assumptions on collective bargaining that I'm sure we're going to get into when we sit down with each department. And of course sharing costs with other accounts. For example, one notable example might be grant writing, where all the departments, all the different funds benefit from grant writing, so we spread that cost across the accounts as opposed to just applying it to the general fund this year. Some notable impacts this year. We are in desperate need of police vehicles. Two of our vehicles currently have more than 115,000 miles on them. Excuse me. I toured the public works equipment dump trucks, and I'm not going to read all this, but you can see 9 of our 15 dump trucks are fair or poor condition. Two of 3 of our sanders are in poor condition. 1 is in fair condition. We are in desperate need of equipment there. We have put this off for years, and now given the being able to bring it in at 0%, the condition of the fund balance, in my view, the time was perfect to make these purchases. We also have been in need the last couple of years upgrading our software and our network computer downstairs, and the phone system needed to be upgraded to be in line with the town is using. They did theirs last year. We're just getting around to doing ours. Breakdown of cost. You can see where we spend our money. 72% of our costs are employees and benefits. Personnel and benefits, I should say. Bottom line is local government is services. Those services are provided by people. People cost money. So that's how it breaks down. Challenge we continue to have in the village, although it was a slight decrease this year, is the value of taxable property here in the village, which in our case dropped 0.8%, so just under 1% this year. But that's slightly over $2.6 million in assessed value. So that's, comes at us in various ways. People challenge their home assessments, people challenge their commercial assessments, people come off pilots, they challenge their assessment through the assessor's office, and assessments lowered, and the value of the housing market, which has been, as we know, has been declining significantly here. So I want to focus a little bit tonight on some ways of going forward. As you recall, last year I spoke about economic development and controlling costs. I think this budget does these two things. The trustees have been very good at trying to control costs the last couple of years. We have limitations where we can do that. Some things we're currently working on with regard to job creation, economic development. We're working with our partners at the regional effort. So the St. Lawrence County Plan, which was funded by the NIPA relicensing, the McKinsey study, but it's actually called the St. Lawrence County Plan. The Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, which the county is redoing this year, those two plans will somewhat align themselves. That is a broad, overreaching economic development plan for the county and the region that we are participating in. The town, the village, and the BDC have been holding strategy sessions and are now beginning to work on a number of items that we've come up with that we want to work on in this community and in this region. And the Moving Massena Forward Coalition is going to release their information on May 4th with regard to specific Massena items that need to be worked on. So there's 5 specific strategies in this budget that I believe in the long term can position us for overall growth. These strategies are a small part of what's going all around us, as I just pointed out a few things that are going on. One of the things that I'm proposing in this budget is that we centralize the Building Code and Housing Office. Currently these services are provided by our paid professional staff at the fire department, but the code office is here. That creates a number of issues. One example would be you get a contractor who finishes a job early and the weather's good tomorrow or the next day, so he or she needs to get down here, get a building permit so they can start their job tomorrow. And I've heard from a number of contractors that it's very difficult to get to the code office, get over and talk to one of the professionals, get back to the code office. And of course, we make it very difficult. You got to have exact change. We need to change that also. So it doesn't work real well for people. If they plan it out, it does, but as you know, time is money when it comes to contractors. When they have to make several stops, that's hurting us. The more jobs they can get in, the more money they're spending in our community, the more money they're putting into our community, the more materials they're buying at our stores, so we need to do that. The other thing, and in talking with the foreman, putting these people all in the same building will benefit us, particularly, let's say the code clerk is off or she's gone to lunch, the phone can be answered, just going to be a much smoother transition. Those renovations at the fire station will be handled by our DPW staff. Next plan is core of the community plan. For years we talked about downtown, but let's be honest, we've really done very little to deal with the issues of downtown. So what I'm proposing is a plan that, first of all, adopts the 485A tax abatement for the core of the community, the downtown core. 485 is a mixed-use tax exemption which requires commercial and residential above it. Any person that knows anything about economic development knows that if you really want to reinvent and reinvigorate your downtown, is you need people living in the downtown core. You need them living above stores. What this tax exemption does is allows for that. This also talks about the note for public and private partnerships, and of course the Downtown Coalition, which worked on a number of things: marketing and recruitment, the historic preservation, renovation and opening the theater, which is an ongoing process right now, working on anti-blight, and so on and so forth. There are a number of things there. So this downtown restoration fund will be a $125,000 fund. Let's talk quickly about the 485. It's a 12-year declining partial exemption from real property tax for non-residential property converted to a mix of residential and commercial uses. So the increase in assessment, minimum $10,000 investment has to happen. If that happens, there's exemptions on a sliding scale that happens over a 12-year period. The core of the community plan, this $125,000. There'd be essentially 4 criteria. Now again, this is my proposal. This could change a number of ways, but one, it would be a commercial rent subsidy program, which would assist with rent for the first year for new and expanding businesses in the downtown core. It'll pay 1/2 or up to $600 a month for 1 year to the landlord for qualifying businesses. The second point, commercial interior build-out program, which helps businesses that are new or expanding with interior build-out. Of course, depending upon the number of jobs that it would create and whoever's governing this, and we think it would be the BDC, the investment could be up to $15,000. Business signage improvement program, which provides up to $1,500 in matching funds to install new signage. And finally, the facade improvement program, which is up to $15,000 in matching funds to make facade improvements. So in a nutshell, what we're talking about essentially is public money that leverages private investment, which then leverages all kinds of other things. Low interest or no interest loans, or various grants and those types of things. So it's kind of a trifecta approach to reinventing our downtown, to bring people to the downtown core. Broader and aggressive, the third strategy, a broader and aggressive housing rehab program. So expanding this office, asking Dank to administer it. If you were here, you recall Dank made a presentation 2 meetings ago to us on how they would do that. There's a number of grant programs that are available under the HUD programs, federal programs, that can allow us to improve the standard of living for people, particularly low to moderate income people. They spur economic development, they improve the look and the blight of our neighborhoods, and they improve the community. And it's a solid investment in Massena. So, it helps in building material purchases. People improve their quality of life, they improve their neighborhoods, assessments go up. It's a win-win situation for communities when we make these investments. And these programs are typically federally funded, so there's no local investment in those. The fourth strategy, which is continued strategic planning and grant writing. In the current budget, the village took a different approach to that. We've had some great success this year with this. The firm we currently contract services with provides a broad strategic plan for both the short term and the long term. So they're not just writing grants, they're working with us on strategic planning. What are we doing now, what are our assets, and where do we want to go from here? And 2 of the most successful this year were the high-speed internet and the waterfront development grants that were awarded, and departments are currently working on those, and you'll start to see some progress on those in the very near future. And the 5th one, which kind of is fluctuating, there needs to be a lot of discussion about this, but it's to transition away from the BDC model. Economic development, in my view, needs to be done regionally. It can't be done on a local level, and that's for a number of reasons. We operate in a silo when we do that, and let's be honest, we have for years asked the BDC to do a job without giving them the kind of resources they need to be successful. So we need to transition away from this model, and number one, either eliminate it altogether, which I don't think is the best idea, and then come up with something that can work and be very effective. And we've had a number of conversations one-on-one with trustees and myself and town councilmen and members of the BDC, and finding what that is. And I think we have to ask them serious questions when we meet with them jointly. So continuing to be a team player regionally with the county seds and the Dank and Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority, all of our neighbors, and of course taking full advantage of the North Country Regional Economic Development Council money that's out there. And what I'm recommending is the community development approach. So get away from the economic development approach and go to more of a community development approach. It's more narrowed, it's more focused. Things like downtown revitalization, things like sports and recreation. So in other words, we try to bring more sports tournaments in here. We try to increase the recreation on the water, whether it's boating, skiing, you name it. We look at entertainment venues. We look at our housing and how can we improve our housing. How can we attract different people to come to the neighborhood, these vacant properties that we have. And we've got a number of ideas to do that. Complete streets program, so which is taking into account recreation, bicycling, pedestrian walking, those types of things. So a community development approach versus an economic development approach. So some serious questions we have to ask. Does our current approach to economic development and job creation work? To me, the answer is no. And will this work as we go forth? To me, the answer to that is absolutely not. So this is kind of just a chart that kind of explains the difference between the two. I'm not going to read it to you, but essentially economic development is a top-down approach, where community development is a bottom-up approach. It's more grassroots. It's more about taking what you have in your community and building upon that, focusing more on the economic, social environment, and the cultural stuff that are going on in your community. Examples, economic development. We're trying to sell the DPW property so that a plant can go in there and create jobs. It's economic development. The industrial park, it's economic development. Repurposing of the GM site, it's economic development. Growing current businesses to expand, it's economic development. Community development, core of the community, focusing on our downtown, getting people to live on top of storefronts. Reopening the downtown theater, not really economic development in a sense, but it's part of the broad overarching theme. Creating bike trails, creating walking trails, developing our waterfront so people want to come here and do things, or the people that live here will stay because there's things to do. That's the difference between economic development and community development. So again, I want to leave the economic development much broader, overarching approach, where community development, I think we can impact that specifically and directly with immediate impact here in Massena we're focusing on. So I'm proposing we continue the planning and grant writing. We continue our regional efforts when it comes to economic development. And by that, it doesn't mean we let other people do the work for us. It means we become a key player in all those regional efforts. And that could be a number of people that will play a role in that. We transition away from the BDC as we know it. Now, does that mean disillusion? Does that mean refocusing? Does it mean we need a planning office as opposed? I don't know what that means exactly. That's for discussion when we meet jointly with the town board and see how we propose and move on, and that we take the community development approach. The numbers. Lots of thanks to everyone that was involved in this. And of course, we have a number of public hearings that are scheduled. We certainly encourage the public to come and watch us go through that process. With that, I'd be more than happy to answer questions.
Yeah, can you circle back to the slide, Tim, on the fund balance, just towards the beginning? I think it might be 3 or 4. So I guess my question would be, what's the source of the increase in fund balance?
I think it's controlling cost. I think it's part of it is controlling cost. And we had some savings the last couple of years in some items. That's one. And did we over budget the last couple of years on certain items? I don't know. That's a fair question.
I mean, that has to be it.
Very likely. In a perfect world, we don't have to put any fund balance into our budget.
So that's the reason for the increase in the fund balance that you're applying towards the budget. There's the extra 176K.
Yes.
Which is okay. Very well. Yep. And I guess my other question is, I didn't quite follow the core of the community. That might be a couple of slides forward. Yeah, there you go. Now, the 125, the second line down, the 125, is that seed money from here? Is that local investment? Where's that money coming from?
We're making applications for part of it, and then what we will do is, what I've proposed in our budget is $25,000, and we'll be asking the town to pony up $25,000. So with this additional $75,000 that we're applying for in other funds, would create that fund.
Okay. Well, if you're applying for 125, okay, if you ask the town for 50, then you'd be really not to put any.
Well, we could try. Councilman?
He woke up. Thank you.
I have a question. I remember I had proposed a vacant property registration that would actually help fuel the core of the community plan, which I believe is a great and fantastic way of going. I remember when I did a quick figure on the amount of vacant properties we had inside of the village, that we would fully be able to cover that $125,000 completely up front once we started the registration. And you wouldn't be asking the taxpayers to pony up any money. That would be strictly coming from the banks that own the properties. Just another idea to throw out there. I don't know where you guys are when it comes to that, but.
We have a meeting next Monday to talk about some code revisions. And the vacant property concept is part of that.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
We have some disagreement as to how we would charge and the kind of income that we would make.
Yeah, the work's been ongoing. The important thing with vacant property registration, from my point of view, and that we're still trying to work out, is to make sure that it's not solely a revenue stream. The village, or any government, in my opinion, should never have a policy just for the sake of being a revenue stream. So we're trying to attack it from an angle that would protect other property owners, blight and all the dangers and risks that come with vacant properties, but not use it as a revenue stream. Because most often the vacant property owners are taxpayers. So
When I had proposed it, it was a foreclosed property, so it would only be affecting the bank-owned properties. It would be.
We're looking at all avenues still. And actually, I've been in contact with a representative from the town board, and they're looking to see if they might want to do something at the same time.
I think it would be a fantastic idea, and we'd be asking for a lot of money from the taxpayers. I mean, that's basically, the number we had was $55,000. That's just about a 3% increase if you're to take it into the taxes, so.
But again, we want to work to make sure that we have a policy that's right for the merit of the policy and not for a revenue stream, so rest assured, the work's ongoing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions?
What's the status of the BDC in your budget?
I'm sorry?
The BDC, what's the status in your budget for that?
I've not allocated specific money to the BDC, but I have allocated $25,000 for planning purposes, which if we were to retool them in some way and refocus them, then I would be looking to convince the trustees to allocate that $25,000 for the BDC for that repurpose. But as it currently works right now, my budget does not fund them. It funds $25,000 somewhere else to retool it to a more of a planning approach and a more focused approach to community development. Yes.
Question on the sale of the DPW property. Is the sale of that going to cover the costs of moving the DPW over to just behind Urban Drive? What's the status on that?
We don't know the answer to that right now. I mean, we're still looking at that. We're looking at the options. We haven't gotten that far. We have, in this budget, we do budget for the sale of the property behind the current facility. However, I have not put the income from the sale of the former Public Works property on South Main Street into this budget. At this point, we don't know the answers to that. Still reviewing that. We've been in discussions. We actually had a joint meeting last week with the town of Massena to look at sharing facilities and those types of things. So it's kind of an evolving process, so we haven't gotten that far yet. No further questions? Great. Carvel, Mr. Shea, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Entertain a motion to open the public hearing to authorize a tax levy in excess of 2%, limit established by General Municipal Law 3C. Is that Mr. Carvel?
Second.
Mr. Carvel, second by Mr. Offeld. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
As you know, this is just precautionary in the event that something happens and we have to adopt that. So at this point, we would leave this public hearing open. If we needed to act upon it when you decide on the final budget, then we would do that, close the public hearing, and then vote to override. Okay. Approval of meeting minutes, February 2, 2016. Mr. Offal, second by Mr. Levere. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of meeting minutes for February 18, 2016. Mr. Levere, second by Mr. Carvel. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Reports of officers and committees. Treasurer report, Ms. Charlotte.
I don't usually have a report the first meeting of the month, but I have a few items that are time sensitive. The first is a bankruptcy discharge of debt. Pursuant to a discharge of debtor notice received from the U.S. Bankruptcy Court of the Northern District of New York, it has been determined that a total debt of $935.28 for a water sewer refuse account ending in 8400 be discharged. A motion by the board is required.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Offel. Second by Mr. Carvel. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And next, we've had a request from CCOM for a subordination agreement dated April 5th, 2016 between the Village of Massena and CCOM concerning a note and mortgage recorded in the county clerk's office on September 9th, 2011. This is from a resident who received a grant back in 2011. They're required to remain in their property for 5 years, otherwise they have to repay the grant funding. So that will be up this coming September of 2016. I don't see that there's much risk in doing the subordination agreement, and this would require a motion by the board as well.
So there, it's up in September 9th, 2016, you had said, Julie?
Yes.
So why are we voting on it now? That's the part that's confusing.
The resident's mortgage with the village will be up in September of 2016 for
Okay.
5 years. It will be up at that point. They had gone to the CCOM to refinance a current mortgage, but CCOM will only do it with the subordination.
Very well.
agreement.
So moved.
Second. Mr. Offel, second by Mr. DeShays. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next, I'm requesting the board's permission to close the first-time home buyer's checking account that we hold at Community Bank as it is no longer needed.
So moved.
Mr. Offel.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carver. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And lastly, just an informational item, due to a change in chief at the volunteer fire department at the beginning of the year, we've had to do new signature cards for the Key Bank Fire Equipment Capital account. There's a depository certificate up there that required signatures from trustee Levere and trustee Allen.
Questions for Ms. Charlotte?
We need a motion on that?
No, I don't think, there's just notifying us need signatures, right?
You signed it, I think, right?
Yeah.
Russell? I give it back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Two signatures.
Committee reports, code enforcement, Mr. Carvel, Mr. Levere.
Only thing I'd like to comment, Mr. Mayor, is it's cleanup season, and I know we've talked, so, and I see it's on the agenda too, but just so people know it's too early yet, so.
And we are going around and asking people to remove it, and if they don't, we're going to either cite them or we're gonna pick it up early and bill them. One of the two things. We're not gonna put up with people putting this stuff out early. Maybe it's good, hopefully the communication gets out there with the dates. It'll help. Economic Development, Mr. Alfeld, Mr. Levere. Fire Committee, Mr. Carvel, Mr. Levere.
Later in the agenda, there's one item.
Anything, Mr. McDonald?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Personnel Committee, Mr. Carvel, Mr. DeShays.
Haven't been.
Police Committee, Carvel, DeShays.
Once again, there's an item for later on in the agenda.
Anything, Jim?
No, Mayor.
Recreation Commission, Mr. DeShays.
Yeah, the financial report for this past year, the arena ice fees are up $2,500 from last year. And we have no outstanding bills at the end of the month. And games and events are up $1,000 from last year, on par with what we had for the 2 years ago. Recreation skating fees are up $400. Skate sharpening money goes into the account and is continuing to do well. That's something new that started this year, sharpening the skates down at the arena. Arena non-ice rental is up $1,700 from last year. This is a check from the Shriners Circus, an event that will be held in May that we did not have last year. Arena advertising is up $290 from last year, $150 from Orlando Fire Patriot, and $140 from advertising for the Mike Tournament. And commissions are up $100 from last year. Concession up is $4,300 from last year. That good attendance at the high school games, Mike Jamboree, and the Montreal Canadian Alumni Game. And this weekend is the Rod and Gun Club, Saturday and Sunday at the arena. That's the end of my report.
Mr. Trippany, if you could pass the word back, this report is excellent. I get this every month, trustees, but you can read it and understand what's going on, so they do a good job preparing it. We appreciate that.
We'll go.
Thank you. Street Committee, Mr. Offeld, Mr. Levere.
Nothing to report.
We do have our complete street seminar tomorrow, so we'll have an update at the next meeting on how that goes. Water and Sewer, Mr. Offeld, Mr. Levere.
Nothing to report.
Initial public comment period. As always, we'd ask you to stand. Please state your name for the record. Initial public comment period. Seeing none, we have no old business. Moving on to new business. Announcing spring cleanup dates. North of the Grass River, April 25 to April 29. South of the Grass River, May 2 to May 6. So we have a number of things. I'm going to highlight a couple of them. We only traverse the street once. We don't accept construction materials. I'll be getting out a more specific list to the media that kind of highlights all this stuff for you too, so in the next day or so. We do not collect electronics. Electronics are collected, by the way, at the landfill free of charge. And there's a number of other things on here. I'm not going to go through them now, but we'll get more information out on these. So again, April 25th to 29, north of the Grass River, and May 2 to May 6, south of the Grass River.
I know that you had spoken earlier about what we're gonna do, maybe cite people, or picket and bill them. The landlord thing always comes up, and we landlords that, the same story gets told every year. Somebody came in from out of town and dumped all their trash, all their stuff in an area, and we're gonna pick it up for free. This is the year to do it. Cite them and just take care of it and do it and bill them. You got my complete support. Adam will have my complete support. Kenny has my complete support if we do that. This is a great service that we provide. And let's not let a few rotten eggs roll in for us. Absolutely.
And we would encourage citizens, if you see abuses, call the police department, report it, and the police are working with code, and we'll deal with it.
Thank you.
We have appointment to a police officer position. Chief.
Thank you. Last couple months, we've had several interviews or conducted background investigation. I'd recommend that the Board of Trustees appoint Connor Truex, who resides at 19 Orchard Road here in Massena. Mr. Truex is an eligible candidate candidate from the civil service list. He currently is a cadet in the St. Lawrence County David Sullivan Police Academy. Phase 2 begins April 26, 2016. Therefore, his appointment would allow him to fully complete the academy and begin employment with our agency thereafter. I'd recommend that Mr. Truex's first day of employment start on April 26, which will be phase 2, to allow him to go through, pending he successfully completes the requirements as set forth by the county personnel and our guidelines. He would fill the vacancy created by the retirement of Joseph Brown.
Second.
Second, first by Mr. Offal, second by Mr. Deshays. Discussion will make sure that the minutes reflect that April 26, 2016 will be the starting date. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Appointment of firefighter, fire driver. Foreman.
I submit the name of Mr. Chad Lacey. He was part of our interview process, and I wasn't ready to put his name forward as I was doing some background checks on him and talking to his references. I think he interviewed really well. He had a nice confidence about himself. Mr. Lacey, his fire experience is limited, but looking at his resume and his current job, he has a extensive background in public safety, which I think will transfer over nicely to the fire department. So if the board desires, I would recommend Chad Lacey fill the vacancy at the fire department.
Second. Mr. LeBear. Second. Second by Mr. Carver. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Voucher warrants.
I move that the vouchers signed by trustee Carvel and myself be approved.
Second. Second by Mr. Carver. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Monthly reports are on the table. Communications correspondence, I don't have any. Trustees? Closing public comment period.
Is it 1 week, Mr. Mayor, is it 1 week ahead that you could put your stuff out?
I'm sorry?
Is it 1 week ahead?
We prefer the weekend ahead, but recognizing that some people, have difficulties with getting stuff out, but yeah, we can live with a week ahead.
Okay.
Entertain a motion for adjournment. Mr. Alfeld? Mr. Carver, discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. We're adjourned. Thanks. Good evening, everyone.